I wonder, as you reflect on, again, this most unusual period that we've been living through, and
Yeah.
especially kind of diagnosing new ways of working virtually, it would seem a portion of which are going to continue even after a point where we can safely return to offices.
Yes.
Um, how do you think about the topic of agility and continuing to keep that on the on the radar and part of the ethos and culture of an organization? There are those who say that it is best managed in close proximity. That even frankly, the whole topic of agile development is something that is originally almost required hand to hand
Yes.
in person collaboration. Now there
Yeah.
have been a tremendous number of learnings as a result of our, by necessity, many of us anyway, operating virtually. Talk a bit about some of the things that you've learned over the course of this period that you think will be sustaining even beyond into the next period, the so-called future of work.
Yeah, it's interesting when COVID started, like a lot of other companies, we pivoted to remote work, and many of the early decisions we made and the actions we took were a bit reactive and tactical. We made sure people had the equipment that they needed at home and that they could get access to what they needed. And we spent a lot of time in the early days, polling our employees to find out how they were doing and what they needed. And we took a lot of actions beyond technology itself. We put new programs, support programs in place for employees and gave them access to services that they might need. So all of that, was what it was at the time. But as you point out, over the past year plus, we've learned quite a lot. And if I think now about the way we're talking about how we make employees successful in this environment, we've changed our thinking, pivoted our thinking a little bit to now start with what is it the employee wants to get done. So whereas a year ago, we might have been talking, do they have a whiteboarding tool, right? Now we're talking about, oh, no, it's not about the whiteboarding tool. It's about how do you conduct a collaborative design session in a remote environment. And we're focused on how we bring to the table everything you need to get that done. Here's the tools you'll need. You're going to need this. We suggest this collaboration tool, this whiteboarding tool. Here's some best practices for conducting this kind of session and this kind of meeting. And this component of introducing more common practices is really something we're focused on now. Really simple things that you don't need to necessarily do when you're all physically together. Did we have a good agenda for the meeting? Do people know why they're coming into the meeting? Are we more scrutinous about who needs to be there and doesn't need to be there? And if they're not there, do we do a good job of either sending them the recording afterwards or sending the minutes and actions afterwards? So this, again, kind of this more holistic view across the technology, the process, and the practices is really something we're focused on that I think has changed over that time. And I think from a leadership perspective, it requires you to be more purposeful. It requires you to think more carefully about what you're about to do, what people need to know. And of course, at the end of the day, this is all goodness because this is improving our craft as leaders and having to do it in a better fashion. I think as you bring these norms into the organization, back to your original question about agility, I mean, at the end of the day, of course, we could talk about agile development, which is one thing, but holistically, the concept of agility is making sure you have the resilience and you have the room to pivot when you need to. Something changes. How quickly do you identify that it's changed? And how quickly can everybody tack to that new place? And I think this approach of kind of creating these just a bit of lightweight common practices and having that mindset of being willing to tack when we see that something's changed is, in my mind, what really forms agility.